Good evening. Welcome everyone to week 9 of the course, and this week we'll be discussing pricing the product. So let's get into this fun, action-packed week of marketing theory. So firstly, what we need to discuss is when we consider price, we mean both monetary and non-monetary prices. So price is the value that consumers give up or exchange to obtain a desired product, for sure, undoubtedly. But then component of that is monetary and non-monetary. So monetary is what we exchange in terms of financial instrument for a product or brand or idea. And non-monetary, though, is where no money changes hands, but there is a cost involved to the consumer. Now, it could be a social cost or it could be a psychological cost. For example, thinking about making the decision or the product itself will be classified as a non-monetary price. So here's an example from an advertising campaign on drink driving on examples of non-monetary costs where they're trying to use price to persuade the consumer to act a certain way. Steps in price planning are as follows. So number one, we follow this whole process to come up with a price strategy. So firstly, developing pricing objectives is really important. Secondly, we need to estimate demand. Economics. 3, we need to determine costs. 4, evaluate the pricing environment. 5, choose a pricing strategy. And 6, develop pricing tactics. So most of what we discuss on the rest of this lecture, we'll be looking at the steps in this price planning process. Firstly, pricing objectives. Now we can do profit, sales or market share, customer satisfaction, competitive effect, and image enhancement. Any of these can be pricing objectives, so it's something to consider as well for your major assignment, whether you should do 1, 2, or all of these as part of an objective for your assignment. As I said, consider, you don't need to do all, you don't need to do just one. It's up to you and entirely based on your target market and your objectives overall. So table 10.1 of the textbook goes through this in a bit more detail, some examples for you to understand how you might spot one of these pricing objectives being applied in practice by an organization. Again, good to go through each of these to make sure that your theory has been applied to practice. That's going to be an essential part for people who are doing a final exam assessment topic. Okay, so estimating demand. Now look, for those of you who love economics, and I'm sure there's some in the house now putting their hands up or doing laps around their bedroom or office, hearing the term economics. Well, this is something where you can just hit fast forward and come back and join us later on in the lecture. But for the rest of you to understand about estimating demand, it's the second step in planning the price of a product. And demand refers to a customer's desire for a product. Now, marketers need to know how much consumers will purchase if the price goes up or down, so we can plan for that in our inventory. So it's best explained by using a demand curve, which you won't see. Because I'm not an economist, I'm a marketer, I'm more concerned about how you might come up with ways of estimating demand. So how we do that is by looking at the number of potential buyers, the average amount of purchases by each buyer, the likely market share, and then followed by coming up with our estimated demand. And here we have table 10.2 from the textbook, which uses that previous slide to discuss how we might come up with an estimated demand for pizza in a market of 26,000 households. So we can see our brand here has a very small market share, but it gives you a very conservative outlook for estimating demand. Again, all you're trying to do here is estimate demand. It is very, very hard to predict it unless you have lots and lots of information about the market itself. Now, moving on to another economic theory, and tonight we're going to have a fair few economic theories in the lecture. So, price elasticity of demand, what we're referring to here is how elastic demand is. In other words, if the price changes on the product itself, does that also cause a fluctuation in demand? Or can I have a premium price for a product and have it not cause any fluctuation in demand at all? Demand will always remain constant regardless of the price. That's what we call inelastic demand. And what we find here is elastic demand is our normal products. Inelastic demand would be our luxury premium products, where there's always a constant demand for those products. An example I hear you say, and yes, I hear you say over the internet, is, for example, a Ferrari or bottle of Grange red wine, for those people out there who like red wine. Or it could be a luxury holiday somewhere, where somewhere exotic and nice. Oh, I don't know, where should we go today? New York. So say the Park Mayfair in New York, I believe one of the better hotels in that city, would always have a high demand for its rooms. So inelastic demand, regardless of the price it may charge. Okay, moving away from that interesting topic, let's move on to the types of costs you may come across. The accounting people in the room, you can now go off and make yourself a cup of tea while I talk about some basic accounting theory here, which is variable costs and fixed costs. So variable costs fluctuate with how much we produce and make, whereas fixed costs never change because they're fixed and therefore include things like rent, utilities, and head office salary. So all that I consider part of fixed costs. So to work out our average and total costs, the average fixed cost is the fixed cost per unit produced. In other words, we have a floor price then on how much it costs to make something. So that's important if we're doing cost-based pricing, if you're wondering why this is important. For those accounting people in the room, you can put your hand up if you love management accounting. This is clearly and closely linked into management accounting. Now, total costs is the total of the fixed costs and variable costs for a set number of units produced. So we understand then our total costs, which will then lead to the average cost. And also to lead to this interesting part here, break even. We're in business to make money at the end of the day, to make a profit. It's very rare that we're in business to not make any money at all, or in marketing that is. And so we need to make a break-even point. Now, it's pretty simple. The moment you're making money, you're in profit. The moment you aren't, you're still making a loss. Break-even is zero. Not too many people I know aim for break-even. You're always aiming to make a profit. No one is making a product to fail in either a commercial or marketing sense. So with this theory here, there is ways to calculate the break-even point. I do not want to see any of you in your major assignment talk about break-even points on pricing. Not necessary, not required. Here's a simple calculation of how to do it, if those of you out there would like to do it for your own personal enjoyment and satisfaction. And you can work out from this the total fixed cost and the contribution per unit to fixed costs. And you can see a rough calculation there of an example. All right, who's still awake? Okay, well, for those of you who haven't drifted off the cat videos, we're now looking at evaluating the pricing environment itself. So these are the other factors to consider which can influence the price itself. We have the economy, of course, consumer trends, and the competition. And each of these can have a significant or minor impact depending upon our market and our consumer, and of course, demand for the product itself. Now, moving away from the environment, once you evaluate the environment for pricing, it's important to then choose a pricing strategy. Now, this can be based on cost, demand, competition, customer needs, and whether it's a new product or not. So, pricing based on cost, this usually happens in B2B markets. You won't really see this happen in B2C markets unless a product is in the bargain bin, and then you may get an idea of how much that product was actually worth in the first place. Now, pricing based on cost has got some advantages and disadvantages, and you'll see this with some of these theories coming up, that there's a slide or two about advantages and disadvantages on doing each pricing method. So pricing based on cost is simple to calculate, low risk, and the price will at least cover all your costs. So in other words, you should hit that break-even point pretty easy. The worst thing about it is it doesn't consider competitive prices, not related to market demand, may not be consistent with brand image. So in other words, you could have made a lot more money because the brand image could be high value product, but yet you're selling it for too much of a price or too low of a price. And it's not related to the PLC stage or product lifecycle stage. And again, a method of cost-based calculation. I'm not going to go through it here. It's a little bit hard on the internet, but why not hit pause, take it all in, go and get yourself some caffeine or sugar to help you understand this slide. But again, it's cost-based pricing. You probably don't ever want to do this sort of method of pricing unless you're in the B2B sector and dealing with professional purchases. Okay, so pricing based on demand. Now, this is what you'll see based on demand itself. We'll usually see this in travel or hotel industries or hospitality. So what we're trying to do is look at a target cost for one strategy. So start with the market price, and then we try and match the price with demand. So we lower the price all the time. It'll fluctuate. And the other one is on yield management. So what we try and do is reward people who book a long way out. Then, of course, change the price as the demand may change over time or match holiday periods. So try and maximize revenue through yield management. Okay, so next one, pricing based on the competition. So we have our competitors' price, and a strategy here is you may price above, price match, or price below. Again, it depends upon your overall marketing strategy here. So just don't look at these slides in isolation, also consider them along with the rest of your overall marketing strategy. So you can see the different ways you might want to price above and the reasons for that, and the same with below, and the same with price matching. Again, it needs to be consistent with the rest of your marketing strategy, and of course, what your customers want and value from you as a brand. So finally, pricing based on consumer needs. So what we have here is usually the goal of long-term customer retention. We promise ultimate value to customers, so this is known as value pricing. So what we're trying to do here is have the consumer attach a value in their mind to the product, and then they pay a price which matches up with that value proposition in their head. So you can see how closely linked this is to positioning theory we talked about a few weeks ago in segmentation. So have a look at this, match it up. Some of the signs of this being used is EDLP, everyday low pricing, where they're doing value-based pricing. Okay, so you might see some other examples of pricing around though. This is captive pricing. For those people out there who use razor blades, you'll be familiar with this, and how if you buy the razor itself, the blades will often have to be purchased, of course, from that same company. You can't go off and buy the cheapest one around and have it fit your blade. It doesn't work like that. So some people say this is captive pricing because it's a captive market. You can't go off and change. This is an example here on the screen of Gillette. For other products, you might have new products, for example, in the marketplace. So we have skimming and penetration and trial price. Each of these are strategies only for new products. I often get people in the major assignment or the marketing plan who talk about new product pricing even though it's an existing product. So don't fall into that trap. So we have the three different strategies here explained. Skimming is where we skim the cream off the top of the market. So we're seeing a very, very high price and taking a high profit margin for a new product because it could be seen as being an innovator in its area. For example, technology products like iPhones, which really had a skimming strategy when they first came in. For other people, it's penetration. So what they're all about is capturing market share or mind share. So they'll set a very low price to capture that market share, usually used in a highly competitive industry where it might be very, very hard to obtain market share. So what they try and do is set a low price to penetrate the market as quickly as possible. And finally, you might have a situation where it's a trial price. So for the first 6 weeks of a product being launched, it's a special price to encourage consumers to adopt the product. So you can see here the different strategies you can undertake with a new product into the marketplace. Okay, now for individual products, we can often come across what we call two-part pricing. So for mobile phones here in Australia, we have a monthly fee for a mobile phone plan, plus then a plan separate to your phone repayment. We may have to then get data and calls and text and all this sort of thing. That'll be a separate part of the plan itself. So you'll pay the phone back over, say, 24 months, but then you'll have attached to that plan a data or call or text plan. So it's now become very, very popular here in Australia with mobile phone companies. You can also have payment pricing. So hire purchase, some people call this, where you basically lease the car or hire it, as it were, and then you finally are putting those payments towards buying the car with what they call a balloon payment. So a larger payment at the end of that initial lease period, we then purchase the car. Woo. Okay, so for those of you still watching, hello back for those people who were watching Grumpy Cat videos. Pricing for multiple products. We can have price bundling, which is very popular here in Australia again. So with Foxtel, for example, or McDonald's, where they bundle several products together and we pay one price for all those products bundled in together. We talked about before about captive pricing, but price bundling is a very popular marketing strategy here in Australia. In fact, it's area of some ethical concern with some products such as petrol discounting and tying in petrol discounts to your purchases at nearby grocery outlets. Okay, another pricing tactic is what we call distribution-based pricing. So how do you access the product, or where do you access the product from, and how do you price it? So we've got different ways of getting your product delivered to you, or acquiring the product based on then how the price is. So for example, IKEA don't do any delivery to you, well, not here anyway. And so you go to IKEA and you are the delivery department, you pick it up, you take it home, you assemble the product. So the price would reflect that. In fact, it might even be higher if they delivered the product assembled to you. So you're paying for that in effect. We can also see discounting happen within the channel itself. So we get the product from A to B, or to C, as it were. And so we have different levels of discounts which encourage the channel members to help distribute the product, but also increase awareness of the product into different markets we cannot reach ourselves. So what we try and do to incentivize that to happen is discount through the supply chain to the intermediary, and therefore they have an incentive to encourage the selling and adoption of our product into new markets we cannot otherwise reach. It's an important point to look at. You might see other points here, for example, on cash discounts, how some companies offer a discount for cash, and seasonal. So you might find on December 26th, all of a sudden, Christmas decorations are very cheap, or after Easter, down come the prices of Easter eggs and hot cross buns. So have a look at this theory, understand how it might apply to your own individual case study, which is your marketing plan, or even to other case studies out there in practice themselves. Pricing with e-commerce, it's changed dramatically from when the textbook was even written. So some things are definitely different here. One thing to notice is what they call the Australia tax. So here in Australia, we often pay a lot more for our technology-based products than people say, for example, in the United States or other parts of the world. So they call it the Australia tax. The other thing to note too is how mobile devices have changed pricing for e-commerce goods and services. So for example, the price of movies or the price of music now reflect how we access and buy and acquire the product. Psychological issues, buyers, pricing expectations, internal reference prices, and price quality inferences. So what we have here is some of the psychological issues behind pricing. I talked before at the very start of the lecture about, or sorry, video recording as it were, or YouTube. Hello, YouTube. So what I talked about at the very start was how we have non-monetary costs. So this is where you can now see coming to practical being is how buyers' pricing expectations, so what they value the product at in their head, can also influence the price charged. internal reference prices, so people have a ballpark idea of what they should be paying for a product based upon prior and past experiences in the product category or similar products. And price quality inferences come about because of the brand. So if we see, for example, Ferrari, would not expect to pay $29,990 drive away for a Ferrari. In fact, we probably wouldn't even ask the price because of how much they cost, because we draw an inference with the brand itself. Other things to be aware of here with psychological pricing, we have odd-even pricing, where you might have seen this in the stores. So $1.99 is more effective than $2 as a price, even though most of us go, well, what's the difference? Well, the difference is increase in sales, so would you like to have that or not? And price lining, which is the practice of setting a limited number of different specific prices called price points for items and product lines. In other words, the consumer knows at different ways across the product line, there's price points. So for example, traveling economy class, premium economy, business, or first. We all know that there'll be different price points for each of those different airline tickets if we chose to fly the friendly skies with certain airlines out there. Well, that's it for pricing. Now, it is one of the harder lectures to get through, one of the harder chapters to get through, in fact, because it is very, very dry theory. And let's face it, not as exciting as watching ads, which is what we'll do next week. So, just to recap, some of the major points here we've discussed in this YouTube video. We're looking at the importance of pricing and how prices can take both monetary and non-monetary forms. Know the pricing objectives that form the basis of pricing strategies. Describe how customer demand influences pricing strategies. We're looking for a break-even analysis for understanding the relationship between costs and selling price. Develop and apply pricing strategies, and understand the legal and ethical considerations in developing pricing strategies. Well, I hope you've enjoyed it, and if you have, thumbs up. If not, well, hey, it's marketing theory. Can't make it as exciting as the next Transformers movie, I'm afraid. I wish I could. So that's it for right now on this lecture on pricing. Hope you've had fun, hope you've listened, hope you've enjoyed, hope you can apply this. And most of all, this is me saying goodbye. So from floor 81 of the ANU headquarters here in downtown Acton in Canberra, this is Dr. Andrew Hughes saying goodbye for now.